Good morning. Good morning, traders. What's up, everybody? What's going on? Welcome back and happy Money Freaking Tuesday. I'm excited to be here as always. Cannot wait to see what the market has in store for us today. We may see all-time highs at this pace, guys. I mean, we just keep going and going and going. But again, super excited for the day. Looking forward to see what we have in store and looking to capitalize on all of the opportunity that presents itself. So before we dive into the rundown and get you guys prepared for the day, go ahead and hit me with a big old good morning inside the chat. And as always, we already know who's coming. If you're inside of the Zoom and you want to scream good morning, feel free, open the mics. Let's go.
Good morning.
Good morning. I love the good mornings. My favorite part of the day. Oh, and you guys can't see my beautiful face. I wonder if I still got my mustache on. Is my mustache still on? Oh, it's not. Nope.
Good morning.
Good morning, Catherine. Sorry, I need you guys to not take me serious today. So just give me 1 second so I can put my mustache back on. Which is really unfortunate that no one else can see the mustachio. It's actually a really good look for me. I'm thinking about growing the mustache and then starting to go with a little bit of a long, little, what do they call that? A little mullet? Just like that. Like this with a mullet. Beautiful. All right, what's up, everybody else inside of chat? It's time to get serious now. Joey and Don, Aaron, Craig, Alan, Zach, Steve, Jonathan, Chelsea, and everybody else. Good morning again. Welcome back and happy Money Tuesday. Let's officially dive into it and get you guys prepared for the day. Before we do that, though, we'll be discussing the SPY and the Qs. And I think we may have some opportunity with NVIDIA today. We'll take a look at that. So again, have your stocks ready to go. All right, if there's anything you're looking at, just make sure you have those ready to go. We should be able to blitz through this properly in the next 10 to 15 minutes tops, which gives us about 15 minutes before market open that we want to use wisely, get you guys prepared for the day, and just make it happen. All right, so today on the economic calendar, guys, we're pretty much in the clear through the early morning trading session here. We don't have any data or any key events. But we do have a few Fed members speaking here today, right? You got Fed Bostic speaking here at 1:35. Then you have Fed Barr speaking here today at 2:45. So if anybody comes back in the afternoon and you're trading the afternoon, just be mindful that you have two Fed members speaking. And again, things they say, the remarks they give could be a market moving thing. So just be mindful of that. 1:35 and 2:45. Today, you got a couple Fed members speaking. Other than that, we are in the clear. So let's go right to the SPY and let's break this bad boy down. First and foremost, throw up the gap on the SPY. That's one of the main levels I'm going to be watching today is this overhead gap between 560.53 and 562.09, right? Then we're looking for other key levels of support resistance. Well, overhead, this is going to be all of the key resistance that I'm really watching today. Right? No other zones overhead that I really care about. Really just comes down to this gap. Okay. Now, as far as, lower zones of support, you just got to really look left and scan this entire region to see where could there be some key significant lower support for today. And this is the area that stands out to me on the SPY. It is going to be this little zone here between 556.44 to 556.78. Okay. Now, we can see we had some resistance off that level here. We got above it, held it as support, We dumped through it on July 18th. So what you guys can do is drill this down to a lower time frame and then go back and look at July 18th and see how we moved off that zone that day. There was some good price action. And then we came up and back tested it with that high before we had that nice big gap down and that big old flush. Okay, so that's the first area of lower support that really stands out to me. And we just completely broke through it yesterday on that daily candle. But again, to gain clarity, just drill back into a lower time frame, for example, and look at yesterday and see how the stock moved off that zone. Because we don't have a lot of clarity on the daily. We just see a big rip through it. So now it's time to start drilling back down into those lower time frames to help us gain even more, confidence and conviction in that zone. And I like the way that it respected that zone yesterday, right? We came up into it, we got rejected pretty hard, broke inside of it, held the support, and then up, and away the rest of the day off that zone. And you could do the same thing going all the way back into that candle here on July 18th. And you see good price movement around that zone that day. So I like that zone. It's the first key zone of lower support that I'll be watching here for today. And it really just comes down to those two zones right now. I mean, we could throw another lower zone of support down here up against these two previous highs of day and then yesterday's gap up open. And we can see that this is going to be another pretty key significant level of lower support. We have multiple touch points, resistance, 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 and then yesterday's gap up open. All right, so that's going to be another lower zone to keep on watch for today as well. That's down here between 554.71 to 555.04. Now, in between this lower zone of support and this top gap resistance in this region, is there anything else that really stands out to us as far as like key significant levels? There are not. So these are going to be the main areas to keep on watch for today. All right, so down into a 5-minute time frame, let's start building some hypothetical plans, right? I like to call those what if plans. Like, what if the SPY breaks inside of this gap, holds the lower end of support? Just what if? What would Mr. Joshi Poo look to do? Man, my words are rhyming today. I like it. Mr. Joshi Poo would want to go long, right? Like, what if we broke inside the gap and held the lower end? I know there's a 70 to 80% chance that we rip on up and fill that gap. So I would want to play that long. So that's trade plan number one, is a gap fill long today up towards around 562.09. All right. Let's say that we do come up and fill the gap today, right? And we see it's getting rejected. What could we look to do off the top end of the gap? We could potentially look for a short opportunity, right, for a gap fill rejection, right? We know that 70 to 80% of the time when a stock fills a gap, typically we see it get rejected and it's tradable. So if we come up and fill the gap at 562.09 today, I would be interested in getting short back down towards around that 560.53 level, right? That's game plan number two, is the gap fill rejection. Now, game plan number three is going to be if we come up to the bottom end of this gap at 560.53, and if we fail to break above it, if we just cannot get inside of the gap and we get rejected, I would be interested in looking for a short off that area, right around 560.53, expecting to see a little bit of downside here today. That is your third and final game plan. Why are we not going to build any game plans if we come down to the support level, right? Because that's a long way down. We got plenty of time to build those plans and analyze any opportunity in the moment if we start to come near that level. But we're so much closer to the gap level that there's a higher chance that we do something off the gap level at the start of the day. Right, so I'm going to leave you guys with those three plans, right? The gap fill long, the potential gap fill short, and then if we just cannot break inside this gap at that 560.53, that would be an area that I would be interested in playing the SPY short for today, okay? With that being said, you have any questions with the SPY, let me know. If there's any other zone that stood out to you and you're wondering, Josh, why do you not have the zone that I have? I think it's pretty significant. Bring it to my attention. Let's look at it. Let's grade its strength and really see if it's a key area we should be watching and looking to trade off of today. But let's go ahead and move on to the Qs. All right, couple things with QQQ here. All right, we do have this gap overhead, right? I don't think it'll fill today. We're pretty far away from that gap. So I just don't think it's going to fill today. But go ahead and mark it up. We do have this gap up here between 488.86 to 493.13, number one. Number two, we have this zone of resistance here on the Qs. Now, this zone is here between 483.36 to 484.56. I literally just saw Stir's post from 7 minutes ago with me and my mustache. So that's going to be an area of resistance. And if we just look left and we look at all of these multiple touch points, we can start to validate that this is going to be a pretty nice significant level for today. And again, that zone, if you missed it because of my chuckle, it was 483.36 to 484.56, right? So we see low of day before we dumped through it here. Go back and look at that June 20th candle in a lower time frame. You see good price action around it. Same thing here on that June 28th candle. We spiked through it, got rejected back below it. Pretty decent price movement around that level here on June 28th. And then we came up and hit it with a high a day here before that gap down dump. And that's what I really like about this zone, is it was this candle's high a day before we saw that gap down and that hard drop to the downside. So that's a pretty key level. Is going to be that high a day right here, which is also the top end of this zone. And that zone, once again, 483.36 to 484.56. And so 484.56 is a key level because, number one, it was the high a day before that big gap down. I like that point. It stands out to me. It's significant when you have highs of day, rejections, massive gap downs, and follow through. Those highs of day typically hold down as pretty key levels of resistance. But the other thing that really stands out to me that gets me very, very, very convicted off that, day's high a day, the top end of that zone, is it's also the 23.6 fib extension. So if you take a fib extension from all-time highs and drag that bad boy down into these lows here, what is right at the 23.6 extension? What's that candle's high a day, which is the top end of that zone. So that really validates that area even more for me, to where if we can't break through that level and we get rejected intraday, I'm convicted in getting short off that level, right? It's the 23.6 fib extension. It's that daily zone that we can clearly see as overhead resistance. And it's that candle high a day from July 23rd where we got rejected. We gapped down and saw some follow through to the downside. So that's going to be a very, very key level. That's a make or break level for me today here on the Qs. Right? So you got your 23.6 extension. You have that zone of resistance. We've discussed this overhead gap that, hey, could get filled at some point. Keep it on watch. But now let's go find some lower zones of support. First thing that I want to do is go ahead and just mark up yesterday's high day and close. Okay? And just kind of look at that area to see if we are respecting it, see if there's any kind of opportunity off that level. It's a very tight level, though. That's the only thing I don't like about it, is it's very narrow in price, right? So if you throw a zone up off yesterday's high day and close, that gives you a 4-cent zone. So tight, between 481.27 to 481.31. So I don't really expect there to be any kind of awesome trading opportunity off that 4-cent zone, but it's going to be a reference point for today, right? Because what could we see? We could see a continuation push. I mean, that's kind of what we saw yesterday. We gapped up, came down, filled the gap, and then ripped. I know we took some heat below that level, but again, we still saw some upside continuation. If you take a look at the SPY, it was actually more textbook perfect, where we had a light gap up. We came down, filled the gap into the previous day's close, and then saw the second day of upside continuation. Well, in this case, it's like day number 8. But again, we saw that continuation play to the upside. The gap up, the hold, the push. And that's what we could see on the Qs, right? Anything could happen. Could we gap up above yesterday's high and close? Sure could. We hold that level of support and then see another day of upside and see some continuation? Absolutely. So I want to go ahead and just mark up that zone as a reference. Okay, it's a light zone. Tread lightly with it. Don't just look to take a trade off that zone. It's a light zone, but we're using it as reference to see how the stock moves around that level today. But your most significant key zone of lower support here on QQQ is going to be down here between 475.58 to 476.43, right? We have multiple touch points on the daily off that zone, right? High day rejection, broke above it, held it to support, held it to support, held it to support, held it to support, hit it as resistance, hit it as resistance. We got multiple touch points off that zone here on QQQ, right? So that's going to be the most significant lower zone of support that I want to keep on watch for today. That's between, again, 475.58 to 476.43. So those are the 4 main areas that you should be focused on for today here on QQQ, right? So let's go ahead and build some hypothetical plans, right? We are looking to be gapping down below yesterday's high day and close. Tread lightly with that level. It's such a tight zone, but if we have an opportunity presenting itself off that level and we're respecting it intraday, I would be interested in looking for a trade off that level if something takes place. Right? So let's just go ahead and make that our light line in the sand, our LLITS. Our LLITS. It is our light line in the sand for today. Just curious to see how we react and how we move off that level. And I mean, if you look at it in post-market, pre-market, right? We see that it did respect that level pretty well as support resistance. So it's definitely an area I want to keep on watch for today at the start. And again, that's going to be here between 481.27 to 481.31. So if we see an opportunity to get short off that level, I would entertain a short. We come up, see a strong intraday rejection off yesterday's high and close, I would be willing to play short today. Where to? That lower zone of daily support. Now, are we going to hold this trade if it sets up all the way down to that 476 region? No, right? Is that our main profit target? It is, but there will be pit stops along the way down. These will be some profit-taking levels. PT1, PT2, PT3, so on and so forth, all the way down into that main PT level, which again is that daily zone of significant support. So, game plan number one. If the Qs open below yesterday's high and close, we come up, hit that level, and see an intraday rejection off that area, I would be interested in getting short with a main profit target down at our next significant lower zone of daily support. But if see the Qs snap back above that level and regain it and hold above it as intraday support, I would be looking to play the Qs long into that daily zone of resistance up against that 23.6 fib extension that sits right around 484.56. I would look to play it long up into all that resistance. That's game plan number two. And game plan number three is going to be if we come up and actually see a rejection off all that resistance. If we just cannot break through it and we see a reason to get short up around this 484.56, again, I would be interested in looking for an opportunity to play this short, expecting to see a little bit of a rejection, see a bit of a pullback off all of that daily resistance, expecting to see a little bit of a decline, potentially back down into yesterday's high day and yesterday's close. Okay? So that is the analysis on the Qs. Those are your three game plans for today. And again, just to stress this, tread lightly with that 481.27 to 481.31 zone. It's so tight. It's 4 cents and it's a light level. All right. So if you're like, I got to get short and load the boat off that level, just again, tread lightly, have your confluences, make sure you got multiple reasons to take it. And again, let price validate that trade and validate an entry, right? To go ahead and get it. But those are your plans, guys. If you have any questions on the SPY and the Qs, now is the time to ask before we dive into NVIDIA. And NVIDIA will literally take like 2 minutes to explain. So any questions about the SPY and the Qs? Let me know.
I have a quick question on QQQ.
Okay.
So I do have my SOL 488.88. You have it 488.86. But I have it all the way to 492.11. You have it to 493.13. Can you explain that one?
Yeah, I see the reason why you ran it as the way you ran it, and I wouldn't say that's incorrect. You're playing that gap a little bit more realistically, so you're looking at this gap that truly hasn't seen price move through it since we have that little gap. So you're going to play it a little bit more safely. Like if we break inside that 488.86 and hold it, you're looking to play it long into that day's lower shadow, right? At like 490.65, which would be like the first potential level being like the top end of the gap, right? That could be technically where price stops moving higher, we get rejected, and we start to drop on off. But I'm looking at the candle low of day prior to the gap down high a day, and so I ran my gap up into those 2 points as like a main target. So if we break inside the gap and hold the lower end, my main target would be a true gap fill into the low a day prior to the gap down. But your gap level that you have right here could be like a profit target, like PT number 1, where you look to get out, scale out, and then if we keep pushing higher, you know there is potential into that low of day for a true gap fill.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, by the way. Great question. All right, let's talk about NVIDIA. There's just one thing I'm looking at, just one little thing. So it really comes down to having multiple confluences and really seeing what I need to see intraday that may lead to a nice little short potential. And we've seen this a lot, over the past where we have tight little daily fair value gaps that could get filled and we see little rejections intraday. It was about 30 days ago, we saw a little fair value gap on the SPY that we traded short off of, and it literally worked to the penny intraday off that daily fair value gap, right? So tread lightly with this, but it's something that just caught my attention this morning, and I will be looking to see how NVIDIA moves around this zone today. And if we see something that just stands out clear as day and it's screaming, get short, I want to be looking for a possible short on NVIDIA, but tread lightly. It's a little teeny daily fair value gap right between these 2 points, right? And so if we really dial that gap in, it's going to be between the low of day from July 10th and then the high of day from July 12th. Okay, so that little fair value gap on the daily is between 131.93 to 132.44. Okay, just because it comes in that level today doesn't automatically mean you get short. We need more than just this one reason to get short. But if we see those multiple reasons and it's playing out like it could, and we see an opportunity to play it short, I definitely want to keep that idea on watch. All right, so again, very, very quick analysis on NVIDIA. It's towards the bottom of the watch list. Tread lightly with it, but I'm just curious to see if we ever do come up into that region and see if there's an opportunity to play this short, maybe for some downside on NVIDIA. All right. Other than that, guys, it's been just a very interesting, probably 30 days. I would say about 30 days coming in, scanning the watch list, and not really seeing tons and tons and tons of opportunity. Right? It's been slim pickings. Really, our focus has been with the SPY and the Qs, occasionally maybe NVIDIA, AMD, Tesla, but we're just not really seeing a lot of great opportunity across the board, and it's been like that for the past few weeks. So my focus today is the SPY and the Qs, obviously, and then I'll be watching NVIDIA to see what happens there, and then maybe scanning through some of these small cap penny stocks that are seeing some upside, seeing some great action, right? I mean, you got INM up 370%. You got TGL up 187%, TTMP up 82%. A lot of these pharmaceutical biotech companies that are starting to gain some traction. And we saw that yesterday with GOVX and VRAX. Now, they are gapping down this morning. We did not continue to see some upside, but there were opportunities to trade those two stocks yesterday. They were our top 2 gaining stocks. Today, I will be scanning through some of these penny stocks to see if there's any opportunity out there, if again we have limited opportunity within the SPY and the Qs. So that's where my focus is today, and that's how I'm looking to navigate this market to make today just an amazing day and hopefully a profitable day, right? Any other stocks you want to have reviewed, now is the time. All right, so get those mics open. Let's review some stocks. Let's build some plans here. If you have any questions about the SPY, the Qs, NVIDIA, now's the time as well. Go ahead and ask. Got about 8 minutes until market open. Now we got 7 minutes till market open. Anything anybody want to add? Maybe there's not a stock you want to review. Maybe you have no questions, but maybe you want to add something that you noticed during your analysis this morning that could benefit the team. Let's go ahead and jam on that too. Yes, I am back with the stash, Kevin. We got a rowdy bunch today. All right. So yeah, we're good to go. I mean, I'm ready to go for market open. We'll see what the SPY does at the bottom end of the daily gap at 560.53. And I will be watching the Qs off yesterday's high day and close. Last thing that you guys can do as well is run a downtrend off those pre-market highs, right? We got a downtrend. It's beautiful. It's consistent. It's being valid. And that may line up with yesterday's high and close at some point, and that would just be a second reason to maybe look for a short just off that downtrend resistance from pre-market if it lines up properly. That would put you around like 1130 though. If you put your cursor over that zone in the trend line, it's like 1130. So maybe that opportunity comes towards the end of the session, but we'll see. But that's the only other thing that you could really do with the Qs here. Craig, what's up, man? You're looking at a zone on the Qs between 478.41, 478.41 up to, or down to 477.81, 477. Let's go ahead and get that zone dialed in. 478.41. And you're going 477.81. All right, so you got the zone right here. Yeah, I mean, you've definitely got a few touch points off that zone on the daily. We'll go back down to yesterday and see how it respected that zone yesterday. But yeah, you ran up into it, high day rejection, you broke above it, retested it as support before you saw that explosive move to the upside. You gapped down and opened at that level, you dropped, you pushed back up above it, held to the support, held to the support. I would drill down into a lower time frame on July 1st, see how we moved around that level. I would drill down to a lower time frame on July 18th as well, see how we moved around that level. Just on these candles where we don't have a lot of clarity on the daily, maybe you see something that stands out on a lower time frame, and then again, nice little low day tap. So, I mean, I can see the zone. It's definitely a zone that stands out to me. Absolutely. You're definitely seeing it correctly. Go into a 5-minute time frame, and let's see how we moved around that level yesterday. Well, not really a whole lot. We just kind of pushed right through it. This lower zone, we have better movement around it. This zone here, just again, we just right through it. Let's go back and look at that zone over some lower time frame days. Just kind of see if this zone stands out. Obviously, that was that low a day that we saw on the daily. This is that big red day through that region on July 19th. And you kind of held below it as resistance right here. I mean, you definitely chopped around it here, but then you got below it, held it, dropped, got below it, held it, moved lower. So you got some decent action around that level. On July 18th, just nothing. It was just all over the place around that level. But on the 19th, it was some pre-market support. Again, what we're doing is just going into a lower time frame because we can't really see as much on the daily compared to a 5-minute, right? And it's really just the process of building some confidence and conviction in that zone. You got some decent price action around that level from that July 1st candle before you saw some upside. And you can see that, you know, we've grinded that level of support, resistance. I mean, it's a pretty decent level. A lot of resistance, support. I mean, yeah, I would keep it on watch. It's definitely a valid level for sure. But really looking at it just yesterday and comparing those two zones from how we moved yesterday, I like my lower zone better. And the reason I like that lower zone better is just seeing how price developed at that zone yesterday compared to that upper zone. So is that still an area? Is like maybe a potential area to scale out if you're short? Absolutely. Which area do I think is the most significant level that I'm the most convicted to get long off of? This one here or this one down here? I would say this one at the bottom. I would be more convicted to look for longs at that lower level compared to this level right here. Not saying that we can't come down to it and hold it and see a long opportunity. I'm just simply basing this on a conviction. Which area stands out to me? Which one am I the most convicted with to be looking for a trade opportunity around? I would say the lower one. But again, that top zone that you have, definitely a valid zone. And we built some conviction around it just by really going down into those lower time frames and getting an idea on how have we moved around that level. So yeah, keep it on there, man. I think you're on the right track there. Definitely an area to keep on watch today. That's between 477.81 to 478.41.
Question, Josh.
What's up?
When you're looking at the lower time frame zones,
Yep.
You're just looking for the candles to pretty much test those zones that we're marking in daily as either support and resistance, right?
Like what we just did with Craig's zone?
Okay, so pretty much
Is that your question?
Look for that.
Like what we just did with Craig's zone, why are we drilling down to a 5 or a lower time frame? The reason why I'm drilling down into a lower time frame is to see how price moved around certain zones when you don't really see anything from the daily. Like take my zone, for example.
Okay.
Right? I have 1 touch point, 2, 3 touch points. I can drill this down into a 5-minute time frame and see how price moved around that zone intraday on June 28th. The daily gives us nothing. But on a 5-minute, we see a really good price movement and price development around that zone on June 28th. Then I'm going to go ahead and look at the July 17th and the July 18th intraday price action around that level. And by doing so, if I see good movement on those days intraday where I gain no visibility or clarity on a daily, I just basically build more conviction in that level because we have really good intraday price movement, say around that level. So that's when I drill down to a lower time frame, is when I just need more visibility on certain days off a certain zone, just to again try and build more conviction and confidence with that certain zone.
Got it. Marcus started.
Yep, because the more convicted and confident I am in a certain area, the more inclined I am to be ready to take a trade off that level. If it's a light level, I'm not really confident. I'm not really looking to take a trade just because it's there. So my whole methodology in the morning is, again, just really build some confidence and conviction for the day off my levels and my zones.